Do you have some tight glutes that are being a pain in the butt right now? Do you work at a desk for most of the day and get a lot of tension in the backside of your hips? Or you're just looking to loosen up those hips and glutes before your next workout? If so, I got you covered. I'm Dr. Israel, and as someone who treats a lot of musculoskeletal injuries, specifically lower back and hip pain, tension in our glutes can cause a huge host of problems. So even if you don't have pain in this area, it can still lead to a lot of issues down the line. So that's why today I'm going to show you 3 moves that help a majority of my patients who either sit at desk for a living or they just have a lot of tension in the backside of the hips here. Now, if you're not familiar with my videos, I like to take 3 moves that go in sequential order, where first we want to reduce tension, specifically tension in the glute muscles. Second, we want to restore motion, specifically hip joint motion. And the third thing, we want to reinforce with some strength and stability. So we're strengthening our glutes while we know how to loosen them at the same time. And I've discovered this 3-prong approach really helps my patients in clinical practice. So I want to share these tips and tricks with you. Now, disclaimer, if you have a ton of pain or tension or even sciatica, don't be a hero and guess whether these movements are going to help. Seek a local movement or medical professional before trying any of these moves. So let's get started. As already mentioned, the first move is going to be reducing the muscle tension back here. First thing you're going to do is lie on your back. Let's say I'm going to stretch out my left side first. I'm going to cross this leg over the other, and then from here I'm going to drive my knee towards my chest, and I'm even going to hug that if I can, and I already feel a ton of tension on my glute and backside hip here. So super beginner friendly would just be holding this position for a good 30 to 60 seconds, but most of you will be able to do a little bit more than this. So if you have tension here, but you feel like you can go further, you can just simply pull on your thigh or bring your knee closer to your chest, and that should increase that tension. Again, level 1 would just be holding that tension, or if you can start to rep this out for a good 10 to 15 reps to see if you can start going further and further with each rep. For me, I can tolerate this, so I'm gonna do the repetitions. If you can't rep it out like this, just hold that static stretch. It's still gonna be effective at reducing that tension. After a good 10 to 15 reps, of course, I'm gonna do both sides while I'm here. Again, hug that knee closer to that chest. Again, level 1 would just be holding this static stretch, and then level 2 would be trying to rep this out for a good 10 to 15 here. And of course, I'm trying to go further and further with each rep, really letting that tension melt away through the glute muscles. So there's a very effective way without equipment to start reducing some of that tension, but let me show you a bonus tip if you got a foam roller at home. So if you have a foam roller, you can get more bang for your buck. So if you've never loosened up your glutes with a foam roller before, first what we're gonna do is line the foam roller up parallel with our leg here. We're gonna come up into like a crab walk position, and then we're simply gonna sit on that muscle, aka the glutes here. Now from here, you can start to roll side to side, and you're trying to seek and destroy the tight spots. A lot of you will feel more tension where that muscle inserts right through here. So for me, I'm gonna roll through there, found a tight spot. Again, I'm just gonna park it there and do some mini rolls. Now, if you're not feeling much tension rolling through here, don't worry, I got you covered. Next, you're going to cross that same side leg over top of the other one, just like that figure 4 stretch. And then you're going to start to pendulum back and forth, again, trying to find those tight spots. And if you have a foam roller like this, you're going to roll through for a good 30 to 60 seconds, or until you feel that tension starting to melt away. And of course, don't discriminate. Do the other side while you're here. Again, I don't feel much tension on this right side, so I'm immediately going to cross this leg over, and then I'm going to seek and destroy that tight spot, and I found one right here. But like I mentioned, if you have a foam roller, you can get more bang for your buck. If not, those figure 4 stretches I showed in the beginning will be plenty to start loosening up that tension. All right, so now that we reduce some of that tension, next we want to restore motion through specifically the hip joint. So for this move, we're going to be doing what we call hip external rotation liftoffs. So let's say I'm working on my left side first here. I'm going to lie on my side with this bottom leg out in front, where my knee's at a 90-degree angle and my hip's at a 90-degree angle. So from here, I'm going to put some firm pressure on my outside thigh into the ground. And then from here, I'm going to think about lifting my heel or my foot up to the ceiling, trying to restore as much of that external rotation range as possible. So just from here, I'm gonna rep these out. Seems super simple, but you'll feel this opening up that backside of the hip. You might even feel a little bit of glute activation, totally normal during this movement. So I'm gonna do a solid 10 to 15 here. With each repetition, I'm trying to carve out and go further and further without compensating or moving anywhere else but my hip joint. If this is too easy, you can do a lift off and hold at that end range for a good 3 to 5 seconds. Bring her back down. You should really feel this smoking the glutes on the backside here. And of course, while we're already here, we might as well do both sides. So gluing my thigh to the ground, all this movement is coming from my foot going towards the ceiling. Again, I'm not trying to move through the hip joint or anywhere else. We're just trying to isolate that motion through the hips and really get those glutes warmed up and starting to loosen up even more. As I mentioned on the other side, if this is too easy, you're simply just gonna rep this out and hold at the end for a good 3 to 5 seconds. Almost feel a borderline cramp in my glutes. Bring it back down and then repeat until you get all your repetitions in. And after just those first 2 moves, my hips are feeling loose. Feels like they're breathing back there. I got a lot of blood flow to the muscles, which is essential for getting them to loosen up. But we still have one more move to go, and that's gonna be adding a strength and stability aspect to the hips. Since we're targeting the glutes specifically, we're going to keep trying to open up that external rotation range, since that's what the glutes like to do, extension, external rotation. So our first move when it comes to strength and stability is gonna be coming from this we call high oblique sit position, where I'm just kind of supporting myself here, and I got my thigh out in front of me, straight ahead, again at a 90-degree angle with my knee. And then from here, I'm gonna simply fold at the hips until I feel a lot of tension in this backside glute. And then this is an active stretch, so we really wanna drive that knee or outside shin into the ground to bring ourselves back up. We're gonna rep out a good 10 to 15 of these. Again, get to the end range. I don't wanna round through the spine, driving that knee into the ground to bring myself back up. After just a few repetitions, I already feel my glutes are on fire, which is exactly what we're looking for here. And with each repetition, we should start to open up that range further and further. So we're really continuing to reduce that tension while getting that activation through the glutes. Again, if you're doing this before a workout, you're gonna be really primed for a lower body day. After my 10 to 15 here, of course, we're gonna switch to the other side. I'll show you from the side angle here. So if I'm up in this 90-90 position, this might be difficult for most of you. So that's where we just drop down to our hand here. And then from here, it's easier to isolate that hip hinge motion until I feel that big old stretch on the backside of the hips. And then I'm driving this into the ground to bring my torso back up. And we're just gonna rep this out for a good 10 to 15. So you'll see from the side angle, as I rep this out, I should start to go further and further, really feeling the glutes activating on the backside here. Again, trying not to compensate and round from the spine. Nice. And then after your good 10 to 15, you want to see how far you can go. Whew. And I feel my glutes or my Georgia peaches roasting right now. So for most of you, you should feel a lot of glute activation with these I call high oblique hinges. But there'll be a couple of you that don't feel that activation just yet. Don't worry, I got you covered with this more advanced move. So here was the first move where we're doing these high oblique hinges. Again, using my hand here for support. But for a couple of you sickos that want to take this to the next level, we're going to come up into that full 90-90 sit position, trying to be as upright as possible. And then from here, we're going to hinge forward until you feel a stretch on the backside of the glutes. And then same thing where we're gonna drive our knee or shin into the ground, but instead of bringing ourselves back up, we're actually gonna bring ourselves up and forward just like this. Beautiful. And then we're gonna slowly control that range on the way back down, feeling those glutes elongate with some tension. And then we're just gonna rep these out. I just call these 90-90 sit-ups, where I hinge forward, drive, almost like I'm getting up out of a chair or I'm sitting up. And then I'm gonna slowly sit back into that range. Whew. And just after a couple, I really feel this roasting back here. So from the other angle, if I was starting in that high oblique sit position, I'm gonna come up as upright as possible. I'm gonna hinge forward, feel a ton of pre-tension here, driving into the ground to bring my hips up and through or sitting up. And then I'm gonna slowly sit back into that range, really trying to control that movement as much as possible. So again, with each repetition, you're trying to hinge further and further, so you get that full range of motion through the glutes, get that full activation, and after a good 10 to 15 reps, you'll be surprised at how much your backside glutes are loosening, but also firing at the same time. And you get extra credit for really living in those ranges, so trying to go slow and controlled. You don't want to just force through this because you're not going to get as much bang for your buck. So really trying to slow it down, almost like you're going in slow motion, trying to really control the micro movement of that hip joint. Whew. And again, you'll feel your arse on fire. Well, there you have it. There's 3 very effective movements that are going to help you reduce tension in the glutes or those backside hip muscles. And then secondly, you're going to restore that motion, specifically into that external rotation and flexion, really letting those glutes elongate. And the third is reinforcing with that strength and stability. So getting into those hinges, really elongating those glutes and then forcing them to contract as they loosen up with each repetition. And for you advanced people, those sit-ups and sit-backs, super effective on getting those peaches to start firing. So if you have chronic tension back here in the hips or those glutes, give this routine a try. And it's a great warm-up if you're going to be doing squats or deadlifts. And if my philosophy makes sense to you, where I take this 3R approach to reducing tension, restoring motion in the joints, and then reinforcing with strength and stability, let me know in the comments below what muscle group or body area you want me to do next. And if you have a stiff SI joint, check out this video to start reducing that tension today.